Thank you very much, Robin, and good morning to everyone. I do appreciate you all joining us. I know it was a pretty quick turnaround from an announcement standpoint on this training webinar, which is did that because it's a little bit different from our traditional webinars, as this is not our traditional training guidance. This is us trying to get new information and some new guidance that are best practices really regarding the COVID grant that we wanted to share with you as quickly as we can, since we know this is a project that is developing in real time and one where we are having to try to make as much progress as we can so that we can meet the performance standards on that grant the best we can. So just a few things. I don't think this webinar will take the full time that we have budgeted for it. It will all depend on the dialogue we have, any questions you have, and then discussion that comes from the information that's shared. So we'll jump right in. First thing I wanted to share with everyone, I know we've mentioned it several times, but as you know, we have officially submitted the grant modification to add the additional temporary employment sites that we have talked about proposing. Just so you know, we haven't shared that proposal yet because we know there is always the possibility that they could come back and try to edit and winnow down that list beyond what we proposed. And so we don't want to put a list out there that someone could conceive as being approved or being a new list if that's not the final list that we get approval. So as soon as we get approval on that, I promise you we will share that news with you all immediately so that you can hit the ground running and continue to move. To let you know, at a high level, we did propose the addition of two new categories of jobs. The first one being directly related to testing for COVID, so helping with testing sites, including even those who may be administering the test. So we expanded this time, so the proposal includes working with even private employers. So it could be with a hospital, it could be with a pharmacy, any other private partners that are administering testing in your area. We have included that as a comprehensive proposal so that you can help potentially offer jobs with the admin side of a testing site, with the actual administration of the test, or with the processing and trying to follow up on a test. So we did include that testing section, and we also did one around comprehensive vaccine distribution, which also includes partnering with private pharmacies and hospitals, including even the ones who, and no, to the question in there, there's not a PowerPoint. We haven't got to the slide yet with the PowerPoint. So no, the PowerPoint's not supposed to be moving, Terrence. I know, make sure everyone else, if anyone was curious on that too. But we will have jobs around the vaccine distribution as well. And so that will be everything from, again, administrative side of it, from trying to manage the site, from call centers to help get people set up, which we can actually move forward with call centers now because we have call center jobs proposed. But it will be, you trying to help people sign up, get them registered once they are to your website, or to if they need to call in, and then also trying to actually manage the site of the vaccine. So once people arrive, helping them get signed in, help keep the site socially distanced. But we've also even proposed some of the healthcare related positions for administering the vaccines themselves. So again, if those get proposed, you may have a chance to potentially support some of those, because we wanted to make our offer, or at least our proposal, as comprehensive as possible so that every potential vaccine related job or testing related job could be approved if they choose to do so. So again, last time we did have several jobs that they came back to us and we had to have a conversation for them to say, these are okay if you tweak them in this regard, or these need to be taken off altogether. We're hoping we get blanket approval on all of these, but obviously we have no guarantee of that. But the minute we do hear, we will be sure to let you know. So before moving on to the rest of the content, are there any questions or comments about that proposed modification or where it stands? Excellent. If not, we will now advance. So now we just want to talk about some really its best practices and suggestions around implementing the grant that we think will hopefully try to improve your success with the grant overall. And we'll specifically today really be talking about the temporary employment opportunities. So not as much time on the employment and training side of it. I think most people, aside from outreach efforts, and we'll talk about the communications team, we'll talk about that a little later on. But in terms of the challenges of actual administration, there tends to be, or has seemed to be, more on the temporary employment work sites than there have been on the employment and training side. So one issue we wanted to make sure we brought up and have a discussion around today is encouraging you, if needed, if you have noticed that thus far into the grant, as you've tried to promote your temporary employment opportunities, if you've had a hard time from an outreach, a recruitment standpoint, because you can't have individuals who are willing to do the jobs or to accept the positions, one thing we're encouraging everyone to consider is to reanalyze, if needed, the wage that you have attached to that job. Now, obviously, if there are existing jobs in that work site, the TEGL does mandate that you make sure the wage is fair to what other people are being paid. But we want to make sure for a lot of these are new positions that are being created for COVID. And so you want to be fair to other jobs in the area as well to make sure that this is a competitive wage that someone would even be, drawn to, or that would be appealing to them to want to take the position. So one piece of data that we'll share with the follow-up material from this after the webinar is we got GDOL to provide us, and it's about a week or two old now, but it's data that'll show you the average weekly UI benefit that individuals are receiving in your area. And that will help you realize when you're trying to make this a potentially competitive opportunity for them, meaning that they would be willing to potentially step away from receiving UI benefits to get this because it would be more of a lucrative opportunity. That will help you look at the counties in your area, because it's broken down by county. Look at the aggregate of all of those counties of what that average weekly benefit is. And I would encourage you to use that to analyze that to what your wages are now. Many of you may be fine, and you may find that your existing wage is above or well above what those weekly average benefits are. And obviously I would calculate it at the hourly rate so you can make that an equal comparison. But if not, if you notice it's lower, then I would encourage you to consider moving that up, or to look at raising that wage in a way that makes sense, in a way that's reasonable, but in a way that, with common sense, as we know, why would someone choose to walk away from a benefit that is greater or equal to go into a job that, as we know, these may not be the most fun or most glorious jobs, especially if if they see it as a risk to putting themselves at exposure. We're hoping that with the vaccine distribution, if that gets approved, some of the image problem with these jobs may be solved, as people may see that as not quite as, for lack of a better term, risky as maybe some of the other sanitation jobs may seem. But again, we'll see how that folds out, one, if and when we get approval, and then two, once the jobs are implemented. But again, wanted just to say, for some of you, I know some of you have already begun in the past month to analyze your wages and look at moving those up. So we do encourage everyone to do that, all of you that have temporary employment work sites. In doing so, though, there's still just a few things we encourage you to keep in mind based on the parameters of the grant itself. The first and obviously most important is that $20,000 per participant cap. We did, during our monitoring, so for those that do and don't know, a few weeks ago, we had a desk review, or an audit ceremony, really a pre-monitoring service that we went through, as did 3 other local areas, with USDOL on this grant. And so it did give us a chance to ask a lot of questions, for them to ask a lot of questions of us, and for us to even get additional feedback and guidance that we had not gotten prior. One of those areas where we did get new guidance was around the participant cap. So originally in the TGOL and in the FOA, when this was released, it just said, that the $20,000 cap is calculated aggregately, meaning your total expenses on the grant divided by your total number of participants served. What we found out in that monitoring session, that there's 2 different areas where they will be monitoring and calculating this for this grant. One is in the aggregate, so looking at your total expenditure divided by your total number of participants served. And that includes both on the disaster relief side and on the employment and training side. But they're also going to be looking at this at the individual participant level as well. So keep in mind, when you're looking at wages and other assistance you may be providing to individuals, including if you're co-enrolling them in employment and training services, that $20,000 per participant cap is being applied by USDOL at the participant level as well. So just something for you to keep in mind, to also keep in mind as we go to the next slide when we talk about additional services. But again, I think depending on the length of the work site that you are going to enroll them in, you can always tweak as you need to make sure you stay within that $20,000 cap. Any questions on this wage piece before we move on? And again, as Robin said, if you have questions throughout, feel free to put them in the chat box, and I'll, as soon as I see them, we'll answer them. I'm watching that. But you can also now at the end, I'll give breaks where if you want to unmute yourself to ask a question, you're welcome to as well. So any questions on the wage piece? Okay, we will move on. So the next piece we want to talk about is around supportive services for these temporary employment opportunities. We noticed in looking at some of the budgets, and this was something we didn't really think about until later either, but for a lot of areas, you may have budgeted for supportive services for your employment and training participants, but we noticed there weren't a lot of areas that budgeted for supportive services for those participants engaging in the temporary employment opportunities. So we would encourage everyone, if you have not done that already, if you do have temporary employment work sites, to look at potentially shifting your budget around to budget for supportive services that you can provide to those participants who are engaging in the temporary employment opportunities who qualify for them. You all have existing supportive service policies on the books that determine how you make sure someone has a need for supportive services for your general WIOA funds. Those would absolutely be applicable when trying to provide WIOA services for these opportunities. So what we have noticed though is I think a lot of times we can make the misconception supportive services are more needed on the training side because that individual is not receiving a wage. Therefore, they're going to need the assistance for these particular areas to be able to complete training. But I think we also need to keep in mind when we're looking at these temporary employment opportunities, given the current expanded UI benefits that are in place due to the pandemic, you want to make sure that even if you put your wage at a level that is competitive for maybe making someone want to come off UI because of it is greater than the benefit they're receiving, you then have to think about the cost they will be incurring to take that job. So the cost of transportation to and from the work site, potentially the cost of childcare or dependent care if they have that. So we definitely encourage you, to provide these services to those who are available and to even promote the availability of those services wherever and however you're promoting these employment opportunities. It's not saying it's a guarantee. We know that. We know there are certain, each of you have your own policies around what qualifies someone to be eligible for supportive services or how it needs to be justified. But I do think it's important when you promote those that you also say, for those that it applies, there are additional supportive services or additional support around things like transportation and childcare that could be provided to assist you while you're participating in the temporary employment worksite. Again, keeping that total, $20,000 cap in mind, because it does involve, wages, any fringe you're paying, plus these supportive services. But again, most of us, when we did these calculations, most of you guys were nowhere near that cap when you originally proposed your plans. So I don't think that'll be an issue for you guys to reanalyze. If you decide, if you look and you did not originally budget supportive services, but you would like to do so now and reconsidering, all we need from you, and you can reach out to me and I can provide it to you, is that you just update your budget narrative to show that. We have to, on our weekly report to USDOL, we have to report to them what each of our subrecipients have budgeted for each of these pieces. So what you've budgeted for in temporary employment wages, what you've budgeted for employment and training on tuition ITA fees, and then what you've also budgeted for supportive services for each. So if you do decide to do this, show the pots that you've set aside for supportive services for your ENT activities, and then also the pot that you've set aside for supportive services for your temporary employment sites. Because we have to break those numbers down. And if you submit it, I need some additional detail, we can go back and forth to get what we need. But we will just need to update that to show that you have made that change in allocation. Okay, I see Aviana raised her hand. If you can unmute yourself and ask a question.
Oh, I'll just wait. Never mind.
Okay. But on that piece, were there any questions about the supportive services piece? And by all means, feel free to ask anything. There's no stupid questions. We're happy to address anything or just discussion. If there is an area on that has done this and has experienced success, or if they've experienced challenges, this is really meant to be more of a discussion than in a true webinar. We want your feedback on each of these pieces because we want to know if there's additional or enhanced guidance we can give or that we can look into for you all. So any thoughts or feedback on this piece, feel free to chime in.
Hi, Jamie. I was wondering about when you had talked about on the call center, you said that one's approved now.
Yeah, so we do have, if you look, and if I need to send it out again, we can send it with this webinar. If you look at the table of the jobs that are proposed already, in that we propose kind of a community resource call center person who could help at that time provide just information about the virus in general, how to stay safe, how to socially distance. So now, I think that was broad enough in approval that can now apply to setting up a call center for maybe a testing site or a call center for vaccine sites. So absolutely, since we do have a call center position that is already approved, if you have opportunities to do that, you're good to move forward.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? So this is one that I think there probably will be discussion, but I think it's one that we actually, and we're kind of glad that the area we're about to talk about was part of the group that was monitored this past week or the week before last by USDOL, because we should get very strict feedback on this. But we actually think that there's a model that WorkSource COB has set up in their temporary employment work sites that we actually think is a very innovative and unique setup that I don't know why we hadn't considered previously, but that I think helps us get around the traditional issue that we all are familiar with of why it's really hard for WIOA to partner with temp agencies in general. So what we'll get into, and this is one where I encourage you, if you think you have an opportunity for this in your area, to reach out to Sonia and her team at WorkSource COB. I think they've got experience in this now, of actually setting this up and how they need to structure it. They got a lot of questions asked of them by USDOL, so they can tell you, hey, we got this feedback during our interviews or whatever may be helpful. But again, it's not necessarily going to be a great fit for everyone. It's just going to depend on the partners and the setup that you already have in your area. But if you do have it, then this is something we wanted to share to give you an idea. So the way their model is set up. So for example, one of the work sites they're working with is the school system, one of the school systems in their area. That school system had an existing relationship or a contracting relationship with a temp agency for hiring individuals to come in for them to help recruit, to screen them, and then to hire them for their employment opportunities. So the worksite agreement with WorkSource Cobb is directly with the employer, being the school system. So just like any of you that set up worksite agreements, their worksite agreement is directly with the school, but then, or the school system. Then the system, or for you, the employer you're working with, that organization contracts directly with the temp agency on the larger services that that temp agency is providing to help with recruitment, to help with outreach, and then to help with, screening, enrollment, and then actually getting them employed. But what is clear is that the worksite agreement between the local area and the school system is setting out that that agreement is just to pay for the wages, which are established of what those are hourly and what that will be for that length of time. And so what this does with the employer contracting directly with the temp agency, not the local area is actually never contracting or going into any type of agreement or offering any payment to the temp agency directly. And so that is what we believe this gets you around that issue of what has always been called double dipping. So in the past, the reason we typically can't partner directly with a temp agency for something, say like an OJT contract, is because when you're working with a temp agency, obviously the employer that they're going to be placed in is paying that temp agency a fee for service. And built into that fee for service is everything from the cost to recruit and promote the job, the cost to screen the job, and then also the wages and fringe, because oftentimes they will be an actual employee of the temp agency that's working in that, that work site. So the challenge is if we then were to engage with that temp agency to try to fund, say, a wage reimbursement for an OJT contract, they are then being paid twice to cover the wages for those individuals. We would be paying them out of WIOA funds as a reimbursement for those wages, but then also the fee for service from the employer would also have a wage component built in. And so that is why traditionally WIOA has not been able to partner with temp agencies on your traditional worksite based services because of the fact that that payment will be a duplication of a payment they're already receiving from the employer. As opposed to when we reimburse an employer directly, we are helping them recoup some of the costs that they have directly incurred and they haven't been paid for elsewhere. So we think this model, and we got no negative feedback at all from USDOL, and if that changes, we'll be sure to let you know. But we don't see any reason why there would be on the surface any issue with this model. And we think if it's one where as you engage new work sites, if you're with a work site that does have an existing relationship like this with an agency, that can be helpful for you all to explore this potential assistance, because we think it has proven very successful for Cobb in terms of getting individuals and screening them and getting them enrolled. Obviously, you would have to work to make sure. I mean, you're going to have to do your due diligence in setting up with the work site to make sure that the temp agency or whatever organization you're working with understands the eligibility criteria for the grant. So you'd have to make sure if they're doing that screening and then determining how you're going to interface with them to get them enrolled in it. Those are details you'll have to work out. But again, that is, I think, a model that we think is definitely a best practice that they have used, and that has, as you will see in the weekly numbers we send out, has allowed them to have some of the highest numbers, if not the highest numbers, of temporary employment work sites. So any questions, discussion, or if there's anyone on from Cobb that would like to add something that I didn't do it justice or correct any of this information, by all means, please feel free to do so. But again, kudos to them for thinking outside the box and finding a unique way to handle this. Any questions or discussion? You guys are quiet this morning. I think you haven't had your coffee like I haven't yet. Well, all right. Well, we will move on. We have the next one. We're going to have a quick little, oh, Amy, did you raise your hand again, or is that still up from before?
No, I raised it again.
Okay, great. Yeah, go ahead.
So maybe this is something that Cobb can answer.
Sure.
So what job descriptions are they using for this? And is that something that you'll add?
Sure. So you mean which of the approved positions are they using?
Yes.
I believe, and if Cobb's on here, they can clarify. I think it is some of the sanitation related jobs with the school system. So I think they have set up some of those sanitation jobs to help, prevent or mitigate the spread of the virus. And that's what they're doing with the school system. But if someone's on from Cobb that can correct that or confirm that, that'd be helpful. Anyone? I thought I saw a few folks on. Anyway, but that's what I believe, and we can check afterward, Amy, and let you know if it's different.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions? All right, well, we will move on. And Robin, this is where if you can, we will launch the poll on this next one. So we have a quick little poll for 3 questions just for us to get an idea of who is currently utilizing Employ Georgia. So we've encouraged this in the past, but we just want to get an idea. So simple question, is your area utilizing Employ Georgia? If yes, have you experienced success with recruiting individuals from the platform? And then thirdly, if you're having trouble with utilizing the platform, would you like additional training on how to better utilize the platform? Again, there's no bad answers or wrong answers. We're just trying to get a gauge of where everyone stands. Give it a few more seconds if everybody will complete the poll. You can leave it up for a minute, Robin, and I'll talk through it. But as we're seeing, good news is it looks like by and large, a large majority, and that could change as more numbers come in. Most people are utilizing the platform, which is good, or at least those who responded. We can see a mixed bag of responses, which is what we expected in terms of success. Some have experienced that, and I may get you, if you're willing in a minute, to share some of those success stories. The other is what we've noticed, though, and it's good to see that they're split on more training. So what we will do, because I think as you will see on the screen, there is a website that we will share after this to give you a chance to explore as well. And then we will do this because I think it will be more helpful instead of getting into the weeds of this here for those who maybe don't need the training, as we can see, because half of them are saying, no, I understand the platform, that we will do a separate training to try to get into and maybe even get a rep from GDOL who can come on and maybe do kind of a Q&A or do a troubleshooting to walk through what the platform can do or should do better. But what I was interested to hear, and this is where I will ask for feedback if anyone's willing to chime in. From what the interactions I've had with most of you all that have used this, it seems that there's no answer. So that 38% that say no, they haven't had success. It seems in my interactions with you all, it's less on not being able to utilize the platform properly, but more of just not either getting a lot of respondents, but then they don't respond to you when you reach out, or they're not eligible, so the screening's maybe not as good. So that is where I will ask for those. We'll start with those who say no, they haven't had success. If anyone's willing to share what that experience has been like and what you think has prevented you from being successful in utilizing Employ Georgia to try to recruit participants. And don't be shy, because the more you give us, the more it helps us know how we can try to better provide guidance or training or say, hey, there may be better opportunities. So one of those 11 people, if you don't mind sharing what success you haven't had or what's been your challenge you've experienced with Employ Georgia. Amy.
Well, you know I'm going to talk.
Hey, I appreciate it.
So the issue that we've had is, one, I'm not getting applicants. In the last month, I've had about a dozen. I've actually gone onto the site and sent messages to those, and out of all those that I've sent, I've only gotten maybe 2 responses. And then most of the time when I do get the applicants, when I reach out to them, I can't get in touch with them and they don't respond. So that's been exactly what you said. That's been our issue.
For sure. And that's why we know, at least with a platform like this, you are likely going to get, if you get a high number of applicants that come in, we know the response rate and the placement rate is going to be low. And so the key is trying to figure out how do we maximize, and we'll talk about how we can try to sync those efforts that the communications team is going to talk about here in a minute, where they're going to start doing new things to promote these opportunities. Because we know we're going to have to maximize the exposure to people who see this so that we can then try to winnow that down to that small 5, 3, 2%, whatever it may be of those applicants that actually are eligible or then want to be in the job. So yeah, that's exactly what we figured, Amy. We just want to make sure if there are any other issues beyond that we can try to address. Any other areas having different issues or challenges with the platform?
Hey, Jamie, this is Stephanie with Area 8. I'll just say that, hey, good morning. We have just had a problem with getting people in our area. So Danny, our business services manager, has been working so hard to, recruit and get individuals interested in these work experience opportunities that we do have. But we've got
You're breaking up on us, Stephanie. Yeah, I think Stephanie, I think your connection's not the best, or maybe on my end. I don't know if anyone else is hearing that. But I think I understood you saying you're having people that apply, but a lot of them are not in your area. And that is obviously a unique issue. I'll try to mute that.
For people that are just outside, realistically anticipate that somebody would be willing to drive. We just haven't had any luck, but we've gotten tons of people outside.
Gotcha. Well, it actually all came through there. So I think I heard a lot of that, if everyone else did. But so you had a lot of people that have applied, just a lot that are outside of your jurisdictional area for a local area. Obviously, that is a tough challenge because you can't serve those individuals if they don't live in your area. I would encourage you all, and this is where the partnership across areas will be key. If you do get individuals interested in your positions or in temporary employment opportunities in general, and they happen to be in one of your adjacent areas, I would encourage you, if you don't mind, to try to connect them to one of your counterparts in that area to potentially get them enrolled. And hopefully, if those areas do the same with you, this will help us all get access to those individuals that actually reside within your area to try to get them enrolled. So that is definitely helpful feedback. And we can look to see, I don't know if there's a way to better prevent that based on how the platform itself will filter these jobs based on zip codes. We do have a list of the zip codes. If you don't know how, I have to go on there and play with the platform myself, because if you can filter it by zip code, we have that list of all the zip codes in each of your areas. If you need it, just let us know. We're happy to provide that. But yeah, thank you for that, Stephanie. That's helpful feedback. Anyone else have thoughts or comments?
Jamie, this is Karen. I just wanted to say we'll follow up, as you were saying, we'll follow up with DOL to make sure there's or to figure out, you know, what the mechanism is within the system to allow for a more specific posting regarding geographic location. And there's got to be a way. So we'll see if we can figure that out.
Thank you for that, Karen. Absolutely. Any other questions or comments?
Hey, Jamie, this is Brandon
Brandon.
with the Cab. How you guys doing?
Doing well.
One thought that came to mind, and this is having been on those rapid response calls with companies, is when individuals are directed towards Employ Georgia, and this isn't everyone, but I think this is a significant portion. They're being directed there as a way to satisfy the requirement of their active search. So my guess is that for a reasonable part of the individuals that are applying, they're doing it maybe to because that's what they were told to do in order to continue to receive that weekly benefit.
Sure.
So it may be that, you know, they're applying, but that's not, you know, that may not, when you post a temporary employment opportunity, be what their long-term goal is. So they're probably not going to follow through and respond.
Sure.
So it may be, so I say all that to say it could be that it's just the nature of how, you know, residents are interacting with the platform and are going to the platform that may be causing the issues.
Absolutely. And I think that is a fantastic point. And that's what I was somewhat getting at earlier when I said we do fully expect that there's going to be only a small portion of the applicants you get that are probably going to prove to be viable. And that's why for us, even though I think we can find ways to filter those down better so you don't have to screen through so many, but the more we can try to, you know, expose individuals to these opportunities so that that number overall goes up, so then the viable number goes up as well. I think you're exactly right. And I think that is probably exactly what I anticipated was probably happening with a lot of these applicants as well. So thank you for that. Any other thoughts? And yes, Janice, I saw the comment. We will definitely provide that zip code list. I know Tyler made a fantastic map that shows each area and then has a list with them. So we can share that along with the other information we typically share. Any other questions or comments? And again, as Robin said, we'll be sharing this PowerPoint, so you can have a link to this website here where there's these videos that you can walk through. Most of these are the basics of how to set it up. So if you are one of those 7 people or 25% that said they don't currently use Employ Georgia, I think every possible avenue is better than none. So I would encourage, even though we've talked about some of the challenges with it, if you're not utilizing the platform, we would encourage you to put your opportunities on there. And then we can continue to try to offer training and have communications with GDOL, how we can better refine it. But we do encourage it as a tool because it is a free tool to you all to utilize to try to promote these opportunities. Any other thoughts? There it is. Tyler's already shared it in the chat box. So if you want to look in there, you can see that PDF to the map that he's created that has those zip codes. And then that is the last of my portion. So I will, before I pass it over to the comms team, if there are any other questions about any of the stuff we discussed related to the COVID DWG today, Feel free to ask those now or put them in the chat box later, and I can respond to them there. But just wanted to give this chance if there's any questions for us to answer that we can. All right. Well, in that case, I will turn it over now to the communications team. So Shamika Johnson, our communications director, is on, and so she is going to take over from here, her and her team. So Shamika, there we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Good morning, everyone. We are excited to be a part of this webinar to talk about some of the outreach efforts around the Dislocated Worker Grant. Just listening in on some of the dialogue that's happened this morning. It sounds like across the board, there has been an issue with recruitment and kind of gauging interest in the services that are offered as part of this grant. So our big goal here is just to try to help boost that participation by creating more exposure around those services and making sure that we are placing information strategically in areas where our participants visit when they're looking for job opportunities. So we're just going to talk to you a little bit about an outreach campaign that we expect to launch sometime next week, but that we have been working on for the past month to help initiate with Cox Media Group. So just to kind of break down the elements of the campaign, we have done initial discussion internally and with our local areas about the goals as related to the grant and the service delivery. So there was a lot of planning that went into this. But in terms of implementation, a big part of our strategic outlook for this campaign revolved around the COVID-19 landing page that's on our website. So if you visit worksourcegeorgia.com/COVID, which will take you through a walkthrough of the updated page in just a moment, there was a landing page that took you through a series of steps that was really leading to a call to action to complete the WorkSource Georgia intake application so that we could capture information about you and hopefully lead you to service delivery. We have aligned that landing page now to fit the messaging of the campaign and also simplify those steps tremendously so that folks who are exposed to the ads that we're placing online, they will have pretty much a fail-proof experience when they do visit that landing page. So we'll talk to you more about that. We did create some video ads that we're going to share with you this morning, as well as some graphic ads. And as part of the campaign, there will be a mass email distribution to a few folks that fall within the category of what we see as our target audience. So we just want to try to share those assets with you this morning. Again, I mentioned that we are going to be working with Cox Media Group, which is a partner of TCSG. They have worked on campaigns for economic development and other departments within the system office. So we're just excited to have them support us through this. And we expect this to run for initially 90 days. And if it does really well, we'll only need 90 days. But, we do anticipate weekly check-ins that will help us gauge how it's doing if any adjustments need to be made. So by far, this is a working campaign. We are going to measure closely how effective it is and make changes accordingly. And then finally, we'll be monitoring the back end of our COVID-19 website. We'll be gauging what the participation uptick looks like across the local areas. And then most importantly, receive those reports each week from Cox Media Group on the impact and impressions as it relates to this campaign. So a lot of planning, implementation, creative work and review goes into what we're trying to do here. So just to get us started, we're going to show you guys some of our video assets. I'm partial. I think I have two of the most creative people in the world on my team, Andrea Young and Tyler Johnson. They've been working really hard to develop these assets to help drive the campaign. So at this time, I'm going to ask Andrea to please play one of our videos. These are the ads that will be shown to folks that we target as part of this campaign. Thank you, Andrea. So as you can see, super short video clips that we're hoping to just drive people to that website. I did kind of gloss over this part, and I want to step back for a moment and talk about, thank you. Amy said, well done. We appreciate it, Amy. I do want to talk a little bit about the strategy behind identifying our participants. So when we talk about, traditional marketing, there's only so much that we can do in that area because we are federally funded. But one of the things about outreach that's interesting is that as long as we're able to target those who will eventually receive our services, then that does fall within the outreach category. So Cox Media Group has done an amazing job at identifying where our participants and individuals actually visit as far as their web traffic when they look for these opportunities. So we will place graphic ads on websites that involve a strategic SEO search for how they search for jobs. We will have these running on our social media pages like Facebook and Instagram. We have a LinkedIn partnership that we're going to be showing these ads on. So, and also the email campaign. So what we're trying to do is basically just get into the traffic of their normal web browsing or social media browsing, and hopefully we cross paths along the way. Like I said, that over the course of the campaign, we're going to measure it to see where we're able to capture our audience most strategically and make adjustments according to that. But right now, we are targeting Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, strategic websites that our participants visit, and also the email campaign. So those are the elements of the campaign that we are focused on for this initial launch. All right, so next I'm going to have Tyler talk a little bit about our graphic ads. And Tyler, if you just want to speak a little bit about how we came up with the messaging and just kind of why, what we're seeing on the screen.
Sure. Throughout my career, I've worked on dozens, if not hundreds, of digital campaigns similar to this one, with like similar ad sizes that go on similar websites. Especially with the vertical ones, we want to make sure that it grabs as much attention as possible. Like I like using the color orange a lot, if possible, because it grabs the most attention. A lot of these websites, especially like if you look at the vertical ones, those are going to be one of the typically least seen, but it's going to be next to black and white text. So if it's orange, people are going to put their eyes on it more. And I made sure to have like really big words and some sort of a CTA so that people feel a sense of urgency and they're more likely to click on it.
Awesome. Thank you, Tyler. And you'll see like common copy throughout the course of the campaign. If you run across something online, words like, laid off, free training, WorkSource Georgia can help, things like that. We were trying to figure out the messaging around the campaign early off. And, we kept throwing in the word COVID in there. But what we were able to identify was that, if you've been laid off recently as a result of COVID, you likely qualify for these services. But also, if you've just recently been laid off in general, there are eligibility standards that you probably qualify for a service as well. So we want to make sure to be inclusive in our messaging so that we don't lose anyone before they actually visit the landing page. So I think that these graphic ads really complement that messaging and will hopefully capture some individuals. All right, so I just want to remind you guys that across the board, we always offer any type of graphic assets or support in terms of communication and outreach efforts to local areas and to our partners. So if you ever have like a need, whether it's a short form video like we just showed you, whether it's you need a flyer design, whether it's you need an ad for, a program or initiative that you're launching, we're always here to provide that support because we understand that you may not have those creative folks on your team that have the skills to create those assets. So we do have a form online that we launched recently, the communications request form that you guys can fill out. and our turnaround time is pretty quick. So coming up to the launch of this campaign, if there's something that you want to have developed or something that we could help you with, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're always happy to do so. Let's see what's next. I'm happy to take any questions about this that you may have. Like I said, this is going to launch, we're hoping within the next week, but we just wanted to kind of jump on here and show you some of the things that we've been working on. I do want to mention that as a follow-up of this webinar, we will be sharing a flyer that we created specifically for this group with Dee Dee that she will send out to you guys. And that's just to kind of align with the messaging that we just showed you. And so you're welcome to share it on your social media pages. We'll also be providing like static copy. So the posts that you can use on your social media pages if you want to help promote the campaign and drive people to the COVID-19 landing page. But I'll pause for a second and open the floor if you guys have any questions or comments about what we've done so far. Andrea just posted the link to the communications request form in the chat as well.
Hey, Tamika, it's Aviana. I have a question for you.
Hey.
So we are going on our local CCGTV to promote the DWG grant. Would you guys be able to help us with like media coaching or media training? Is that something you guys could help us with?
Aviana, I'm happy to. Just email me and we'll get together on Zoom and we'll talk through some of the questions that they'll ask. And I'm always happy to offer assistance with that. So for sure. And that is something that we can do as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna take your silence as you're blown away by this campaign. It's just the best thing you've ever seen since Nike, and you don't have any comments. But no, seriously, we appreciate you guys. We really hope that this helps drive participation and make your job a little bit easier in terms of recruiting folks to deliver these services. And again, if you have any needs from our team, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're more than happy to assist.
One, again, as Robin said, thank you all for your time here. Second of all, thank you for all your hard work on this grant. I know it has been a challenge, and I know it's one that we have all been trying our hardest to continue to trudge along as best we can with all the hurdles we've had. I do want to mention, I had an email that just came in, and I think Rob's still on the call, Rob Davis from DeKalb. First of all, I apologize that your email had gotten buried in others, but I think it's a good question I'd like to address here in case any others are having the same question. So essentially what Rob's asking is it okay if when we originally proposed our positions for number of employment and training opportunities or the number of disaster relief work sites, if now that you're actually building out the grant, you're noticing, oh, the average cost per participant is being lower than we anticipated, is it okay for us to serve more than the number than we proposed if we can do so within our existing budget? And the answer is absolutely. You know, don't ever limit yourself on the number upward that you can do. If you're having the opposite experience where you're noticing that the average cost is higher than you anticipated and you think you're going to serve fewer participants than you had originally proposed, then definitely let us know on that case. That way we can make sure that we can figure out how we can try to reallocate to help you. But that's the only time we really need to know. But I do encourage you, if you think you are going to serve more than you proposed, let us know so that we can try to do some number swapping with areas that may be having challenges that you're not. Our goal overall is we've got to meet our statewide goal. And so each of your goals are subsets of that. And so if you're an area that proposed 50 employment and training slots, and now you're thinking, hey, we might be able to serve 80. That's great. Let us know, because we might have someone else that has an extra 30 that they could give you all, so that it'll show you still at 100% a goal, but it will help them maybe shift somewhere else to attain that goal in another area. So all we ask, you absolutely can do it on either way. Just, let us know, keep that updated. Like I said before, if you need to shift anything around in your budget narrative and you need an updated copy of that narrative, send it to, send me an email and I'll provide that to you. But again, any changes you need to make, talk with us, we'll get them made. It's not an issue at all. So thank you for that question, Rob. Any other questions?
Yeah, and if you have some time this webinar, please do visit our landing page, wordsourcegeorgia.com/COVID, so that you could see what other folks will experience when they get there. We kind of have a two-form option. Yes, I verified that I'm eligible for services and I'm ready to take the next step. And at that time, they identify based on their zip code which local area they reside in, and then their information is sent to the email addresses that were provided by the local area. Or they're saying, I'm not sure if I qualify, here's my situation, I'd like to know more information. Again, they identify their residence, and then that inquiry is submitted to the local area. So either way, the end goal is to capture their information and hopefully lead them to the delivery of service. So when you have time, please do take a moment to visit that landing page and provide us some feedback. We can always make edits and upgrades to it because, like I said, this is a working campaign. But thank you for your question.
And for clarity, the email address Shamika was referencing, for you also, that is the email address that each of your areas provided previously when we requested it for our partner referral tool that is going to be launched in the near future. So we were able to double and use those emails for this tool as well. So we ask you to provide one where it goes to someone programmatically affiliated with your area so that they can, help with that intake. So just a reminder on those email addresses to make sure they're monitored. We will have the ability on the back end to track, when those have been opened. So if we have an area where we notice it appears they're going to a dead end email address and it's not being opened, we can reach out to you and let you know so that we can just monitor to make sure that those requests coming through are being, handled. So thank you for that, Shamika. The last thing I was going to say on that question I was addressing for Rob and DeKalb, his last question was, can we utilize, if we have excess, say, temporary employment funds, because those costs are lower than we thought, can we use those to then support employment and training activities or vice versa? Again, the answer is yes, absolutely. You're more than welcome to readjust your own allocations within your own budget. All we ask is that if you do make changes to those budgets, you just send us an updated copy so we can have it on record. We don't have any, problem with how you choose to structure your allocated funds between any of the categories. Luckily for us, on the overall grant, all of the monies that you all received on this grant fall into the budget category of other for the grant. So any changes you make, that does not affect our overall grant budget, which is very helpful in this. But yeah, if you need to make any changes, if you need to shift around based on our conversation today with supportive services, by any means, feel free to make any changes now that you're, more than midstream and you've reanalyzed. Just send us an updated version of that budget narrative. And we'll need the full narrative. And again, I continue that copy. It's not just the spreadsheet that shows the numbers. We will need the narrative that'll say, okay, we're moving this much from E&T to here because we now plan to serve this number of participants at this average cost per participant. But again, that's all we need. Any other questions on that before we wrap up or on anything? Amy.
This is for Shamika. On this page that you're showing now that you're sharing, on that drop-down box that says local workforce area, how does that look? And what if they don't know the right area that they're in? Hopefully they do, but not everybody understands the workforce areas. So what if they click the wrong one?
Right.
Will it get rerouted to the correct location?
Good question. Right above that drop down is find your local work source area. And right there, if they at least know their zip code,
Okay.
It'll put them to the right local area.
I didn't see that. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Yeah, it's a great tool that our team developed internally. And what happens is, I don't know if it's working right now, but when you click that, it'll pop up and it'll show you that local area. And then it'll say, use this local area, and then it'll click it and it'll automatically fill that in for you in the form. So absolutely great point, Amy. And that's also built into that partner referral tool that we talked about as well.
It's like when your kid does something really cool and you want them to do it in front of someone and they just will not. That's what's happening right now.
Literally.
It does work though. We can verify. It's been
Yes.
tested.
Yeah.
Any other questions while they troubleshoot that? And this is based off of, so I will encourage you all, I put in the chat box if you didn't see it, we've shared the zip code map that'll show you all of your zip codes by your area. And so if you will look at those, that's the list that was used to generate this tool. So if you do happen to go through there and you notice, hey, this zip code is not actually in my area, or this one's in another area, can you fix this? Please, please, please let us know. So we do ask each of you, we've done our due diligence to try to make sure it's as accurate as possible. But if you encounter or notice any errors, let us know so that we can update these tools to make sure they're effective. There it is. So it'll show, you'll see it'll pop up, show the area, and then all you have to do is hit select this area, and it will select that in the drop down below so that they just then put their information in and they're good to go. And we knew this would be particular because you're right, Amy. We know most people don't know their area by name, and especially in the Metro Atlanta area, that could be, or the region, that can be really challenging since you have so many areas in close proximity. So this zip code approach makes sure it is 100% accurate. So even between, you know, city of Atlanta and Fulton, it will get that right. Any other questions for our team or the comps team? If not, looks like we're going to be right on time for an hour.
Yeah. All right. So hearing no more questions at this point, we will officially end the webinar. But you can stay, we're going to stay online for a couple minutes if you think of something. And then, as I mentioned, I think we've all mentioned, we'll follow up with a link to the resources within a week. And we hope that you have a wonderful day.